These are the real problems with The Omen.
For generations, the Thorns have been a family of tremendous wealth, position, and power. Robert and Kathy had a perfect marriage and a beautiful child. Then something terrible happened. And then it happened again. And they knew it was an omen. Gregory Peck, Lee Remick, The Omen. Rated R.
Lightning strikes, plane crashes, bombings, Rottweilers, decapitations, baboons. All sorts of situations took place and cursed the production of The Omen, leaving a trail of eerie events and tragic accidents. Now, similar to films like The Exorcist, The Crow, Poltergeist, and Rosemary's Baby, The Omen had inexplicably strange and sometimes deadly circumstances that plagued the production. Many would argue that the following events were just circumstantial. There are still some pundits that argue a real-life curse was attached to many of these working on the film about the birth of the Antichrist. The Omen was released theatrically on June 26, 1976 and directed by Richard Donner. Yes, the same Richard Donner who directed Superman, The Goonies, and the Lethal Weapon series. The Omen had a great cast, including Gregory Peck, the acclaimed Oscar-winning star of To Kill a Mockingbird, Lee Remick, David Warner, and unknown child actor Harvey Stevens as the Antichrist himself, Damien Thorn. Stevens had an audition process that was a little unlike everyone else. Director Richard Donner told the young boy to start hitting him and to not stop. The kid was wailing on the director and even slugging him in between the legs, which cemented his hiring. "Take him, dye his hair black, he's the Antichrist," proclaimed Donner. I guess he just wanted to see a kid that could throw the biggest fit. And one of the scenes in the movie where he actually does throw a massive fit was kind of what sealed the deal in terms of his casting choice. Peck, Gregory Peck that is, agreed to do The Omen because he had just lost his son and he wanted to throw himself back into work to try and get over his grief. Having Gregory Peck in the picture was something that really elevated it to just something that's not a normal horror film. It really brought it to a sense of old school classiness to it. And it also, much similar to The Exorcist, it really elevates this film to being more in a dramatic fare than typical horror. Because at the time, horror was really transitioning over into slasher, B-grade stuff, and a lot of creature effects were starting to come out and being more popular. Science fiction was kind of taking its toll in the genre, and it was starting to move towards that. But again, having Peck in this movie really brought it to a more seriousness to it. People were looking at it differently than they would something like a Friday the 13th. Without Gregory Peck, I think that this movie kind of falls into that category a little bit, just because of his gravitas, his stature, his voice. Everything that he does in this movie screams old school Hollywood. The plot of the movie is relatively straightforward. A baby boy taken in by a diplomat and his wife turns out to be the Antichrist. When people think of The Omen, they usually think of the powerful lead performance of Peck. Something else that really people have gravitated to in sense of remembering this movie is Jerry Goldsmith's score. And it just really pounds into the speakers that Noctus Dominus. Anytime Damien's on or anytime something's referencing him or something bad happens, that score just pounds into your ears. A couple of other things in terms of the production of the movie were some of the set pieces. You had beautiful locations overseas that they shot. Just the way that everything was surrounding Damien in terms of area, atmosphere, it just all worked perfectly. And some of the sequences in the movie, which we will talk about a little later on in this episode, the woman hanging herself at Damien's birthday party, for example, right off the bat, the movie wastes no time in really going into the story of what they're going to be doing here. Of course, this is all on screen. We're here to talk about the things off screen. And of course, the legend of the Omen curse that details all these terrible tragedies and eerie coincidences are so ingrained with urban myth and not even urban mythology. Like some of these things actually happen. And it's just really a case of what your believability factor is. You can really toss into some level of spirituality here too. There's a lot of people that are very religious that said making a movie about the son of the devil is probably not a good idea. And it's probably not good for your soul, your emotions, whatever it is. And there are other people that may not believe or may not have a religious affiliation that are still thinking, well, that's awfully coincidental that something this bad happened. And we're going to talk about all those things. But briefly, to look at things from a theological perspective, the production actually had a professor of theology, Robert L. Munger, on set and as an advisor for all things that pertain to religion, Satanism, the occult. He specialized in the Book of Revelation, and it was actually Munger's idea after a discussion that he had with producer Harvey Bernhard to produce this film. And Munger's writings and teachings were to do so to bring people into his Christian faith. Like, he would write things about the occult, demonism, Satanism. He was really heavily rooted in the book of Revelation. Like, that was pertaining to most of his studies. Unfortunately for him, producer Harvey Bernhard, who was just coming off of producing Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, which is arguably one of the best Star Trek movies to ever be produced, he was riding high off of that. He wasn't really looking at trying to bring people to his particular faith. He was trying to bring box office receipts. And he saw the success that The Exorcist had, and he was strictly all about that money. But he was never really identifying anything that he was producing to his spiritual faith or lack thereof. He was just trying to make money. And this was something that angered Munger after everything had already been done. You know, Munger's still getting a paycheck, so he's still on the set. He started to feel guilty about this. He started feeling guilty about the fact that he was helping these people produce a movie to make money. Munger is actually on the record by producer Bernhard as saying, and the devil does not want us to make this picture. It's not necessarily a threat, but it's almost like a precursor to some of these dastardly things and horrible things that happen on the set. And it's almost like you're putting something out there and you're going to get it back in return. It's a very spiritual manifestation. He wasn't wrong, because everything that followed in terms of the production, it was pretty rough. The Omen curse began in 1975 of September, not soon after production was underway. Lead actor Gregory Peck was flying to London to meet scheduling requirements, and during his flight, lightning struck the plane. Odd, yes, but it's not entirely unheard of, and miraculously there wasn't anything that threw the plane circuits out of whack, and the plane was able to fly onto its destination. But shortly after, executive producer Mace Newfield's plane was also struck by lightning while en route to Los Angeles. That's twice in a span of only a few weeks. And in the special The Curse of the Omen, Newfield recalled, "It was the roughest 5 minutes I've ever had on a commercial airline. It was very, very scary." Which I don't doubt. There was apparently a lot more turbulence and a little bit more shakiness in his flight than in Peck's. Luckily, that flight also made a touchdown without any serious damage. This seems way too coincidental, but let me read something from a report. According to the NTS Lightning Technologies Company, yes, that is a real company, it designs technologies that protect planes from lightning. The average airliner is struck slightly more than once per year. Kind of scary. Other statistics from the Federal Aviation Administration share that a plane is likely to be struck by lightning once every 1,000 flight hours. When you break down the average length of flights and trips per year, this accounts to roughly one lightning strike per year per aircraft. I suppose it's more common than we think, and it also makes people more paranoid to fly, but we're not done yet. Writer David Seltzer's plane was also struck by lightning, made its touchdown, no issues, and while filming in Rome, lightning narrowly missed striking producer Harvey Bernhard out in the open. Lightning may never strike twice, but 4 times, 4 incidents with 4 very important people to this production. That's a little freaky, but this one's the clincher. This one is, you probably wouldn't believe me if I told you, but it's all factual. Okay, here we go. Peck was supposed to fly out to film a particular action scene, so they were chartering a plane to bring him and fly him out to a particular area. But the schedules got thrown out of whack, and everything had to be reshot at a separate time. So that flight that was coming to bring Peck had to be rerouted to go back, and they weren't going to use it. It was a private jet, and the crew that was going to charter wasn't necessary. But what ended up happening was the next day, news arrived that must have freaked out the entire cast and crew, because according to a CBS News article, the plane that they had intended to charter hit a flock of birds and crashed, killing everyone on board. While that wasn't tragic enough, the plane dove into a car driving along the road as it came crashing down, killing everyone in the car. The people in the car? The wife and 2 children of the plane's pilot. I'm telling you, this may seem far-fetched and unbelievable, but all events have been eerily accounted for. That is mind-blowing. That is one of the more shocking things that I've reported on this podcast, and I double-checked. I've done the research. That is pretty freaky. You know, this whole episode's already kind of freaky. So moving on from that, producer Mace Newfield was in yet another traumatic incident. Now, this one didn't pertain to any aircraft, luckily, but he recalled in the Omen Curse or Coincidence documentary that while they were filming in London, the production was in the midst of the IRA bombings all over London. The IRA, or the Irish Republican Army, was a paramilitary organization that has sought to end British rule in Northern Ireland and achieve Irish reunification since its establishment in 1919. Newfield had reservations at a restaurant an hour before it was blown up. The subway station to get there was blown up as he was walking towards it. While it's easy to dismiss these incidents or suspect that they were made up, several specials that covered the film did provide newspaper reports, including the IRA bombing, which reportedly killed 6 people in the blast. Director Richard Donner even had some incidents that he was dealing with pertaining to the IRA bombings. The hotel that he was staying at was also bombed, but luckily he was on set when that happened, so he narrowly missed a fatal incident. There was a lot of turmoil, there was a lot of frantic people running around in the streets, and Donner was also proving that he was one of the more luckier individuals on the set. He was also pinned up against his car after an auto accident occurred. Amazingly, he wasn't injured. I'm telling you, he had 9 lives on that set. What if you were told that puppies, monkeys, goldfish, and kitties got drawn into the curse? Well, unfortunately they did. Now, if you're a fan of animals, this one is going to be a little bit difficult to go through, but it won't be entirely unpleasant. No animals, I will preface this by saying, no animals were killed or hurt or anything like that, but it is still a little bit hard to hear this part if you're a fan of animals. In the shot which Lee Remick falls from the 2nd floor, you see a shot of a fishbowl falling to the ground and shattering upon impact. Richard Donner actually didn't want to kill any goldfish, so he had production crew find sardines and painted them an orange color, so that way they wouldn't really feel anything whenever the glass shatters, and if the glass may have accidentally cut the fish, it didn't seem as cruel. So, see, that's not that bad. But here we go with Rottweilers, baboons, and the lion. The Rottweilers that were used to portray the hellhounds would often turn and attack their trainers, and seriously injured stuntman Terry Walsh during his preparations. There's a scene where David Warner and Gregory Peck are trying to break into this gravesite and look at this tombstone, uncover this grave, trying to find his original child, and this is the hellhound attack. Gregory Peck actually injured a part of his arm as he's climbing over the fence because he was really trying to get over that fence. These Rottweilers, they didn't really anticipate their aggression. They were going right after them, and even Gregory Peck was saying that he wanted to do some of his own stunts to make it look more authentic. He's old school, and one of the Rottweilers was biting at him, and he didn't suffer any injury in this particular situation pertaining to the Rottweilers, but he did hurt his arm on the fence. You can see this in the movie. It is part of the stunt where he is supposed to get hung up on the fence, so it's not entirely something that accidentally happened and they just kept it in the movie. It is part of the stunt. What ended up happening was that Gregory Peck was hurting his arm on the metal pole that was attached to the fence because the dog kept pulling at his pants and he was just trying to get over the fence. So he did end up scraping up his arm. Those Rottweilers were pretty intense, and there's been some discussion to whether or not director Richard Donner was preemptively aggravating these Rottweilers just to get more of a visceral reaction to them on film, because there's only so many things that you could do with trained animals on the set. This is also back in a time in the 70s and 80s where there was a lot of cruelty to animals on sets. And this is really before PETA stepped in and intervened on some of these productions to basically look out for the animals, because we've covered some things on my shorts and in other episodes where animals were brutalized. They were getting killed for the productions. Notably, James Bond's Thunderball, the 3rd movie in the James Bond series, they're killing live sharks on screen. I guess they try to say that it was shark season and that was okay. But anyway, back to the Omen. These Rottweilers were, I don't know if they were spraying something in their face, something to get them really aggravated and pissed off. And it worked on the scene because they were definitely going for it. There's another scene where Lee Remick is there with Damien and they're at the zoo. Now this is supposed to be a sweet, happy scene between mother and son. We're going to have a wonderful, lovely day looking at the baboons. Unfortunately, during this scene, the baboons attack the family car. Again, part of the plot, because the animals can always sense the presence of evil within young Damien. And these baboons attack the family car. Remick had trouble working the gear shift, and when the baboons were unleashed, she genuinely freaked out on camera and couldn't move the car. She couldn't get it out of gear. She was trying to drive off the set because that's also part of the stunt. If you look at this particular scene, you're kind of wondering, is she supposed to just drive through these baboons and run over these baboons? Because there's really no clear way to go. Because again, off screen, they're aggravating these baboons. They're trying to get them riled up. They're trying to get them to be overly aggressive on the car, because in the scene, the baboons attack the car. I should preface this by saying that you should be watching the movie before you listen to these podcasts, but if you don't, well, here's a little bit of a description. So yeah, they're at the zoo and all these baboons just swarm the car. The actors in the car, even young Harvey Stevens playing Damien. Now remember, he's not really the son of the devil. He's just a poor child in this car. They are freaking out because these baboons are literally bashing on the car. They're bashing on the windows. These aren't CGI baboons, people. These are real animals, and they were just unleashed on the car. Now the crew finally cleared the animals away from the car, and she was able to drive to safety. Great acting? Nope. Although she's excellent in the film, the baboons were so vicious, her reactions in the film are genuine terror. The script had originally called for 2 lions to be attacking the car, and they actually had 2 lions prepped and ready for the shoot that day. Unfortunately, that scene never took place, as the 2 lions that were going to be used for that particular scene ended up killing a guard on the set. The guard thought that the lions had already been contained, that there wasn't anything out there in the open, that the film crew had already taken care of everything. So he actually wasn't really paying much attention to it, and unfortunately those lions snuck into his guard booth, and as he was going back in there, he saw them. They felt that they were being antagonized by this poor guard, and they viciously mauled him to death. Nobody really released anything about what had happened to those lions, but I'm pretty sure you can make your really, really terrible conclusions. Perhaps the most tragic event tied to the Omen curse, however, dealt with special effects coordinator John Richardson and his assistant Liz Moore. One of the more difficult scenes to set up was the death scene of David Warner's character, photographer Keith Jennings. This character is integral to the plot, as he was the one piecing together the film's deaths before they even happen. Now, literally showing clues in his photos, there's one photo of himself looking like something will occur around his neckline. There's a shadow, looks like a board's coming through or something. Incoming spoilers, the character dies by decapitation. This effect was pulled off with an obvious dummy being taken apart by a sheet of thick glass. The stunt was the most difficult for Richardson, but nothing compared to the ghastly paralleling accident that happened to him and his assistant Liz Moore. The pair were driving through the Netherlands, and along the way were involved in a horrific car accident. As cited in the Lethbridge News, Richardson escaped with minor injuries, but Moore was decapitated by a tire that smashed into their car. And if that wasn't creepy enough, the accident occurred on August 13th, 1976. Yes, that would be Friday the 13th. This accident took place where there was a road sign that indicated it was 66.6 kilometers away from the town of Omen, O-M-M-E-N. I don't know what to tell you. Like I said, it was verified in the Lethbridge News. That's just way too creepy. But unfortunately, that happened. Yeah, I'm going to need some kind of spiritual cleanse after I'm done recording this. I know I'd spoken about it earlier in this episode, but here's a clip verifying the details about the plane crash and the pilot's family. This is actually an interview that Richard Donner had done for one of the documentaries of The Omen, and I'm going to let him speak about the situation because, again, seems too unreal to believe.
We had no money. We were going to shoot with it on the ground at this small airport. We got a call from the people and said, listen, we have a full charter that day that if you let us charter out, we'll give you the plane for practically nothing. Well, sure, go ahead and use it. That day, they used it, and they took off. The plane hit a flock of birds. The engines quit. They lost airspeed, crashed on to the end of the runway, went down into the street, hit a car, and killed everybody in the car. In the car were the wife and 2 children of the pilot. True story. Every newspaper has it and everything else. The Omen. I mean, it could have happened to us. If we had been shooting that day, maybe it would have been us.
And now I'm going to play another clip by director Richard Donner. Richard Donner was pretty great about this interview. He's basically validating everything that I've said on this episode so far, but this one is actually about the lions. I think there may be a little bit more detail about the aftermath of that, but here's a clip about him shooting at the safari park with the 2 lions and the accident with the guard.
We shot at the Windsor Wild Safari Park. We shot a sequence with lions that never made the screen. The day we left the lion compound to go into the baboon section, the guard was in his little booth. I guess left his door open. 2 lions came in, attacked him, and killed him. We had all these things happen. Are they omens? Because is there something bigger? I say no, it's just incredible coincidence. There are those that would like to think about it and that it's something more. And when the publicity department and Fox got their hands on it, we all said, yes, it's the Omen because we're selling our movie.
The final clip from a production standpoint that I'm going to play is going to be from producer Harvey Bernhard, and he's going to be discussing the incident that involved stunt coordinator John Richardson and his assistant Liz Moore. Again, I don't usually play clips of repetitive information from the podcast. I usually play a clip that doesn't necessarily pertain to anything that we've discussed earlier in the episode. But these facts are just so wild and so out there. I felt like I had to just to validate this information because it's so unbelievable. But here is producer Harvey Bernhard.
John Richardson was on a bridge too far in Belgium. He was our special effects man. He had a beautiful girlfriend. He was driving and had a head-on accident and beheaded this girl. And John is the one that he had invented the beheading of our picture, and so his girl was beheaded, and then he woke up and he saw Liège, 6.6 kilometers. That was frightening.
When The Omen was released on June 25th, 1976, it was one of the biggest films of the year. It made around $60 million worldwide, and it was a huge return on investment for a movie that only cost $2.8 million to produce. The success of The Omen gave Fox the money they needed to complete a little space opera named, what was that movie called? Oh yeah, Star Wars, which was due to be released the following summer. So without The Omen, you may not have ever had seen Star Wars and the rest of its iconic legacy. Now, with The Omen scaring the hell out of people all across America, the sequels were immediately put on the fast track. And Damien The Omen 2 was released in 1978. Once again, the studio was looking for weird incidents that they could use to the film's advantage and for their marketing and all that stuff. Actor Lance Henriksen recalled during the Damien shoot that a memo was circulating among the cast and crew to report anything weird or odd happening to them so they can use it for the publicity. My bullshit detector picked up, Henriksen said. Harvey Bernhard was constructing mythology and I didn't like it. Leave it to good old Lance to let people know how it was. The Final Conflict, aka The Omen 3, starring Sam Neill, mostly known as Dr. Alan Grant from Jurassic Park, in which Damien is fully defeated as an adult, came in 1981, and another sequel, Omen 4 The Awakening, was released in 1991. These two sequels didn't really hold up as well as the first two did in terms of its iconic cult classic following. There were additional incidents in the 21st century that would suggest the curse of the Omen still had some bite. In 2005, while filming a documentary about the curse, producer Alan Tyler confessed that 2 different camera crews in 2 different locations had the exact same technical difficulties when the footage they filmed, according to the Herald. And in 2006, the remake of the movie Omen, starring Liev Schreiber and Julia Stiles, experienced 2 separate incidents. The first befell actor Pete Postlethwaite's brother, who died unexpectedly after allegedly being dealt 3 sixes in a game of poker. The second incident saw footage of the scene where actor Liev Schreiber finds the devil's birthmark on Damien. Some 13,500 feet of film became inexplicably destroyed while being processed. Again, felt like publicity that was being drummed up, and nothing in comparison to what happened in the original Omen. And let's not forget about the first Omen, the prequel film that came out in 2024. And I actually have a clip that I wanted to play. This is an interview conducted by Yahoo UK, and it involves Nell Tiger Free, who plays Sister Margaret in the first Omen, and she's talking about some of the things that happened on set. I'll let you listen to it, and you can make up your own mind whether you feel like she's making stuff up for the sake of publicity, or if it genuinely happened. So here's a clip from that interview.
The director said that she was on set and was filming a scene in a piazza, and said that she felt kind of off that day. And then she spoke to the gaffer or someone, and they said, oh, it's because the circumference of this place is 666, which sounds quite creepy and spooky. So I'm wondering if either of you had any creepy, spooky stories from the set of the first Omen.
I was staring at Ralph's necklace one day, Ralph Einstein, who plays Father Brennan, and he had this crucifix on, and we'd just done a possession scene, so it was, tensions were high, and I was sort of just like locked in a gaze at his neck at this crucifix, and I promise, I was about to swear there, sorry, I promise you, it just snapped in half, this crucifix, and just fell off of his neck, and the two of us were like, and because emotions were already running high, we genuinely thought we had just seen a ghost. Like, it was, listen, there's more, okay? There's better ones.
Well, there you have it. And it's hilarious because if you actually watch the clip, you see actor Bill Nighy. He's an old school British actor. He was in Underworld, Love Actually. He is trying to play along with this as if it's really happening, but there seems to be a level of unbelievability on his face, but he's trying to market the film, so he's still continuing to do so. It's pretty hilarious. I wanted to play the last clip, and again, I know this was a clip-heavy show. There's just so many to play. There's so many documentaries on this topic, so if you just search them out on YouTube, you'll see plenty. But I wanted to conclude with playing a final clip featuring Gregory Peck himself. This wasn't anything that is talking about something specific on the film, but this is just a little bit of him promoting the film. I wanted to end it on something a little bit easygoing here and something a little bit more soothing. And when you hear Gregory Peck's voice, you'll understand what I'm talking about when I say soothing. It's going to put you to sleep, hopefully in a good way. This is featured in Cinema Showcase on June 14th, 1976, and this interview features Gregory Peck discussing The Omen.
I think the first thing I should ask you, as I mentioned in the intro, The Omen is, I think, a very frightening film. Are you pleased with it?
Yes, I think we did what we set out to do, is scare people half out of their wits. I see it as escapism. I think when you become so completely absorbed in what's happening on the screen that you forget yourself for a couple of hours, that's the essence of entertainment.
You know, I think comparisons probably are not wise in anything, but already I've heard people mention The Omen and The Exorcist. And I firmly believe that The Omen, and I'm not saying this because you're sitting here, is a better film. I wonder, are comparisons inevitable between those two films?
Oh, I think so, and it's inevitable that people will bring up Rosemary's Baby. Mm-hmm. There's no use trying to hide the fact that we have a demonic child in this picture, although he doesn't have horns and yellow eyes. He's a good-looking little kid. But he's quite a troublemaker. Yeah. So the comparisons are inevitable, and yet this one is a completely different premise. It's the premise taken from the scriptures, from the book of Revelations, that someday an Antichrist will come to turn man against man, brother against brother, till man exists no more. And I play the American ambassador to Great Britain. My wife is Lee Remick. We're very happy because we've been married some years without children, and we finally have a son. Particularly happy because it's our firstborn. And strange things begin to happen. And it appears that we are the chosen ones to raise the Antichrist and help him to assume a position of political power and influence, which, again, loosely interpreted, is a prophecy in the book of Revelations that the Antichrist will rise from the sea of politics.
That is, just listening to you describe it, brings the fright back all over again.
Well, there you have it, a group of incidents that speak to your need for compelling evidence. And even if one were to conservatively say that 50% of these incidents are explainable coincidences, then that still leaves a large number of very eerie, very spooky, and in some cases deeply tragic events with the Omen at the center of it. Thankfully, the curse of the Omen doesn't seem to extend to people who record podcasts about it, so yours truly looks to be around these parts for quite a long time. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Real Problems Podcast. I am your host, Cinema Steven Sosa, and if you like this episode, please do go listen to the rest of the episodes in the catalog if you haven't done so already. We are now streaming on all available platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, Amazon Music, pretty much anywhere you get your podcast. If you have any questions or anything that you would want me to read on the air, any fan mail, which I do have some fan mail, but I'll read to at a later episode because we have a couple of letters that I want to address, and I want to make sure that I'm answering the questions correctly. If you have any comments or omissions to some of the things that I've said, if you know for a fact that I was incorrect about a particular situation or an event, please let me know, because I don't want to put anything out there that isn't factual. This episode in itself is already filled with things that are just kind of over the top and crazy, but like I said, it's all legitimate to the point of my research, and I'm never above admitting that I'm wrong about anything. And please submit your emails to realproblemspodcast@gmail.com. That's REEL problemspodcast@gmail.com. That's where I will be answering all of those emails. If you like this show, please listen to my other podcast, the Screen Addicts Podcast, where I co-host the show. Basically, what we do is talk about movies, TV shows, all the news surrounding Hollywood and the things coming up. It's a good time. It's a good show. Also, please follow Real Problems on all of our socials. Real Problems Pod on TikTok is something that blows up pretty well. I actually post clips from movies. Like if a movie has one incident that doesn't allow me to have a full episode for, I'll post that one particular incident from the film on the TikTok page. We get a lot of good reactions from there, a lot of views on those videos, so please follow us there. We're also on YouTube, Real Problems Pod. And if you will, I humbly ask you, please leave a star review or a star rating on Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Just those reviews, those stars. Not too proud to beg, but if you could, that'd be great. With that being said, thank you for listening to this episode. I am Cinema Steven Sosa, and that's a wrap.
In a world of box office blockbusters and binge watching, a duo of friends have assembled together to watch everything ever created. They are the Screen Addicts, and they are here to deliver a podcast that is insightful, comical, and the greatest sound your ears will ever hear. Prepare to empty your watch list, as the Screen Addicts podcast is here to be your guide, now streaming on all available platforms or wherever you get your podcasts.